November 12, 2019, 3:47 p.m. Security camera footage inside St. James Hospice Care Facility in Bozeman, Montana, captures a moment in a hallway. A nurse exits a patient room. She's wearing pale blue scrubs, stethoscope around her neck, carrying a medical chart. An elderly woman using a walker follows her into the corridor, moving slowly, carefully. The nurse turns, sees the woman struggling, immediately sets down the chart and moves to help. They stand facing each other in that fluorescent-lit hallway. The elderly woman says something. The nurse responds. Then the elderly woman reaches out, pulls the nurse into an embrace. They hold each other. The elderly woman is crying. The nurse is crying too. Her hand gently patting the woman's back, comforting. Genuine affection between two people who've been through hell together. The footage runs for 6 seconds. 4 years later, that nurse will be found dead in the mountains of Montana, strangled, buried in a shallow grave, left to rot like she never mattered. And the elderly woman's children will use this 6-second embrace to claim their mother was manipulated, emotionally exploited, taken advantage of in her most vulnerable moments. They'll show it in court, point to it as evidence, say it proves the nurse manipulated their dying mother into leaving her $8.2 million. What they won't mention is that over 17 years, this nurse visited their mother 2,200 times, while they visited maybe 50. What they won't mention is that when their mother was screaming in pain at 3 a.m., it was this nurse who answered, not them. What they won't mention is that they hired someone to kill her, paid $40,000 to make sure she never lived long enough to inherit a single penny. This is the story of Audrey Fiske, a hospice nurse who dedicated 17 years to caring for a dying woman, who earned that woman's love and trust through thousands of hours of compassionate care, who inherited a fortune because she was there when no one else was, and who was murdered for it. Audrey Fiske was born on March 8, 1978, in Billings, Montana. She was the middle child of 5. Her father worked for the railroad. Her mother was a school cafeteria worker. They weren't wealthy, but they were stable, loving. They raised their children with strong values: work hard, help others, be kind. Audrey was quiet as a child, thoughtful. She loved reading, spent hours at the public library, dreamed of becoming a teacher or a nurse, something that helped people. She graduated from Billings Senior High School in 1996, applied to Montana State University's nursing program, was accepted with a partial scholarship, worked 2 jobs to cover the rest of tuition, graduated with her RN in 2000. Her first job was at Billings Clinic, general medical floor. She worked there for 3 years, gained experience, learned the realities of nursing, the long shifts, the emotional toll, the satisfaction of helping people during their worst moments. In 2003, she transferred to hospice care. Something about end-of-life nursing called to her. The opportunity to provide comfort, dignity, peace, to help people die well, to support families through unbearable loss. She was good at it, exceptionally good. Patients loved her. Families requested her specifically. She had a gift for balancing medical expertise with emotional support. She knew when to explain procedures, when to just sit quietly and hold someone's hand. In 2006, Audrey moved to Bozeman. Better opportunities, higher pay. She was hired by St. James Hospice, a private facility serving wealthy patients who wanted high-quality end-of-life care in a comfortable setting. That's where she met Estelle Bishop. Estelle was 62 years old in 2006. She'd just been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive, fast-growing. The prognosis wasn't good. Maybe 2 years, maybe 5 with treatment. Estelle was wealthy. Her late husband, Martin Bishop, had made a fortune in commercial real estate. He died of a heart attack in 2001, left Estelle everything, about $14 million in assets, real estate holdings, investment portfolios, a large home on 10 acres outside Bozeman. Estelle had 2 children from her marriage to Martin. Robert Bishop, 38 in 2006, investment banker in Chicago, married with 2 children of his own. Jennifer Bishop Walsh, 35 in 2006, corporate attorney in Seattle, also married with children. Both were successful, financially secure, living busy lives far from Montana. When Estelle was diagnosed, Robert and Jennifer flew to Bozeman, spent a week with their mother, helped her interview oncologists, set up treatment plans, made sure she had support. Then they flew home, back to their jobs, their families, their lives. They called regularly at first, once a week, checked on treatment progress, asked how she was feeling. But the calls became less frequent as months passed. Every 2 weeks, once a month. They were busy. They assumed their mother understood. Estelle did understand. She didn't blame them. They had their own responsibilities. She'd raised independent children. That's what she'd wanted for them. But understanding didn't make the loneliness easier. That's where Audrey came in. Estelle's oncologist recommended hospice care early, not because death was imminent, but because hospice could provide comprehensive support, pain management, emotional counseling, help navigating the brutal reality of cancer treatment.
Did anyone
Audrey
check
was
the
assigned as
stairwell on the
Estelle's
third
primary
floor
nurse.
yet?
She visited 3 times a week initially, monitored vitals, managed medication,
Secured the evidence
provided
by the
wound
door.
care after surgeries, educated Estelle about side effects and symptoms to watch for. But she also did more than that. She talked to Estelle, really talked, asked about her life before cancer, her marriage to Martin, her children, her dreams and regrets. Estelle appreciated that. Most medical professionals were clinical, efficient. They did their jobs well but maintained professional distance. Audrey was different. She saw Estelle as a person, not just a patient. Over months, their relationship deepened. Audrey's visits became the highlight of Estelle's week. Someone who showed up consistently, who remembered details from previous conversations, who cared about more than just vitals and medication schedules. Estelle's first round of treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. She lost her hair, lost weight, lost her energy and appetite. There were days she couldn't get out of bed, days she wanted to give up. Audrey was there through all of it, holding her hand during transfusions, bringing her favorite books when she was too sick to read but liked being read to, celebrating small victories, one day without vomiting, finishing a full meal, walking to the mailbox. Robert and Jennifer visited for Christmas 2006, stayed 3 days, were shocked by how thin their mother had become, how frail. They cried, promised to visit more often, but they didn't. Work was demanding, flights were expensive, their own children had activities. The visits remained infrequent, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Audrey visited 3 times a week, every week, for years. In 2008, Estelle went into remission. The cancer was undetectable. Her oncologist was cautiously optimistic. Maybe she'd beaten it. She hadn't. It came back in 2011, more aggressive this time, spread to lymph nodes. More treatment, more pain, more fear. Audrey increased her visits, 4 times a week now. Estelle needed more support, more care. The second battle was harder than the first. Robert and Jennifer visited when they could, maybe once every 2 months. They felt guilty. They knew they should be there more. But life was complicated. Work, kids, mortgages. They were providing for their own families. Surely their mother understood. Estelle did understand. But understanding didn't fill the void. By 2013, Estelle was in remission again. 2 years of brutal treatment, but she'd survived. Audrey had been there for all of it. Every appointment, every bad day, every moment of despair, and every moment of hope. They'd become more than nurse and patient. They'd become friends, real friends. Estelle trusted Audrey completely, confided in her, shared fears and dreams and memories. Audrey cared deeply. This wasn't just a job anymore. Estelle mattered to her. She genuinely wanted her to live, to have quality time, to find joy despite everything. The years passed. Estelle remained in remission until 2017. Then the cancer returned. 3rd time, metastatic now, stage 4. The oncologist was honest. This time it was terminal. Maybe a year, maybe 2 with aggressive treatment. Estelle was 73, tired. She'd been fighting cancer for 11 years. She chose palliative care over aggressive treatment, quality of life over quantity. Audrey supported that decision, increased her visits to daily, managed pain medication, provided comfort care, made sure Estelle's final years were as peaceful as possible. Robert and Jennifer were devastated when they learned their mother was terminal. They visited more frequently, every few months instead of twice a year, spent longer when they came, tried to make up for lost time. But they had 17 years to make up for, and their mother was dying. Estelle loved seeing her children, loved meeting her grandchildren, but she also saw the guilt in their eyes, the regret. They knew they hadn't been there, knew Audrey had been the one present through the worst years. In November 2019, Estelle had a particularly bad week. Pain breakthrough, couldn't manage it at home, was admitted to St. James Hospice for crisis care. Audrey was with her, stayed overnight, adjusted medications, held her hand through the worst of it. On November 12th, Estelle was stable enough to walk, wanted to move around, get out of bed. Audrey helped her with the walker. They made slow laps around the hallway. Security cameras captured one of those moments. Estelle stopped walking, looked at Audrey, said something that made Audrey's eyes fill with tears. Estelle reached out, pulled her into an embrace. They stood there crying together, nurse and patient, friend and friend, two people who'd been through hell together for 13 years and weren't done yet. The footage ran 6 seconds, a moment of genuine human connection, love, gratitude. 4 years later, that footage would be twisted into something sinister, used as evidence of manipulation, shown in court as proof that Audrey had exploited a vulnerable woman. But in that moment, it was just two people who cared about each other. Nothing more, nothing less. Estelle returned home after a week in hospice, continued palliative care with Audrey's daily visits. In November 2020, Estelle made a decision. She called her attorney, wanted to update her will. Her estate was valued at approximately $9.2 million at that point. Real estate, investments, savings. She'd managed it carefully over the years, lived comfortably but not extravagantly. She wanted to leave something substantial to Audrey, the woman who'd been there for 14 years, who'd visited over 2,000 times, who'd provided not just medical care but genuine companionship and love. Her attorney advised caution. Your children will contest this. They'll claim undue influence. You need to be prepared for that. Estelle's response was firm. I don't care. Audrey has earned this. She's been here. Robert and Jennifer haven't. I love my children, but I also love Audrey, and I want her taken care of.
This is ridiculous.
The attorney suggested an evaluation, independent doctors to assess her mental capacity, to document that this decision was made freely, competently, without coercion. Estelle agreed. 3 doctors evaluated her over 2 weeks. Neurologist, psychiatrist, geriatric specialist. All conducted thorough assessments, cognitive testing, interviews, review of medical records. All 3 concluded the same thing. Estelle Bishop was mentally competent, fully capable of making informed decisions about her estate. No evidence of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. The will was updated December 1st, 2020. Robert Bishop would receive $500,000. Jennifer Bishop Walsh would receive $500,000. The remaining $8.2 million, including the house and all property, would go to Audrey Fiske. Estelle also recorded a video statement explaining her decision in her own words. I'm making this decision with a clear mind and full understanding of what I'm doing. My children, Robert and Jennifer, are successful and financially secure. They don't need my money. They have their own careers, their own wealth. I'm leaving them each $500,000 because they're my children and I love them. But Audrey Fiske has been my companion, my caregiver, my friend for 14 years. She's been here through 3 cancer diagnoses, through surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation, through my worst days when I wanted to die. She's the one who held my hand, who sat with me at 3 a.m. when the pain was unbearable, who made me laugh when I thought I'd never laugh again. My children have visited maybe 50 times in 14 years. Audrey has visited over 2,000 times. She's earned this inheritance, not through manipulation, through presence, through love, through being there when no one else was. If Robert and Jennifer contest this will, they'll prove exactly why I made this decision, because they care more about money than they care about honoring my wishes. The statement was 23 minutes long, detailed, articulate, impossible to misinterpret. Estelle didn't tell Audrey about the will, didn't tell her children either. She wanted it to be a surprise after she died. A final gift, a final statement about what mattered most. The next 2 years were difficult. Estelle's health declined steadily. Pain increased, mobility decreased. By late 2022, she was mostly bedridden, required round-the-clock care. Audrey was there, every day, managing medications, providing comfort, reading to Estelle when she couldn't read herself, playing her favorite music, just sitting quietly when Estelle was too tired for conversation. Robert and Jennifer visited more frequently during this final stage. They knew the end was approaching, wanted to be present, wanted their mother to know they loved her. Estelle appreciated their presence, told them she loved them, forgave them for the years of absence. She understood they'd been living their own lives. But she also knew who'd truly been there, and her will reflected that reality. Estelle Bishop died on January 18, 2023. Peacefully in her sleep, Audrey was with her, holding her hand. The same way she'd been holding her hand for 17 years. The funeral was held January 22nd. Small service. Estelle had outlived most of her friends. The gathering was mostly Robert's and Jennifer's families, some distant relatives, and Audrey. Audrey sat in the back. Didn't feel it was her place to sit with family, even though she'd been more present in Estelle's life than most blood relatives. She cried through the entire service. Genuine grief for someone she'd loved. Someone who'd become one of the most important people in her life. Robert and Jennifer were gracious at the funeral, thanked Audrey for her years of service, said their mother had been lucky to have her, seemed sincere. Audrey had no idea what was coming. The will reading was scheduled for February 3, 2023. Attorney's office in Bozeman. Robert and Jennifer flew in, expected to hear their inheritance divided. Roughly $4 million each, they assumed. Audrey was invited but didn't understand why. Assumed Estelle had left her a small bequest, maybe 50,000, maybe 100. A generous thank you for 17 years of work. The attorney, Gerald Morrison, began reading. Standard legal language about estate distribution and executor responsibilities. Then he reached the specific bequests. To my son, Robert Bishop, I leave $500,000. Robert's face showed confusion. 500,000 out of 9 million? Where was the rest going? To my daughter, Jennifer Bishop Walsh, I leave $500,000. Jennifer exchanged glances with her brother. Something was wrong. This wasn't what they'd expected. Morrison continued. To Audrey Fiske, my nurse and devoted companion of 17 years, I leave my residence at 2847 Mountain View Road, all real property, and all remaining assets of my estate, valued at approximately $8.2 million. Complete silence. Then Robert exploded. That's impossible. That's not legal. This will is fraudulent. Jennifer was equally furious. She manipulated our mother, exploited a dying woman. We're contesting this immediately. Morrison remained calm. Your mother was evaluated by 3 independent physicians before signing this will. All confirmed she was mentally competent. She also recorded a video statement explaining her decision. This will is completely valid. Robert's voice was shaking. We're not accepting this. That nurse stole our inheritance. She isolated our mother, made her dependent. This is elder abuse. Morrison opened his laptop, played Estelle's video statement, all 23 minutes. Robert and Jennifer watched their mother explain exactly why she'd made this decision. Heard her describe their infrequent visits. Heard her describe Audrey's constant presence. Heard her defend her choice with clarity and conviction. When the video ended, they were furious. Not chastened, not reflective. Furious. Jennifer's voice was cold. We're hiring attorneys. We're challenging this. And we're going to make sure that nurse never sees a penny. Audrey sat in shock. $8.2 million. The house. She couldn't process it. She'd expected maybe enough for a down payment on a small house. Not this. Never this. She tried to speak. I didn't know. I never asked for this. I never even suggested anything like this. Robert pointed at her. You manipulated her, isolated her, made her think we didn't care. This is theft. Morrison intervened. Ms. Fiske did nothing wrong. If you choose to contest this will, that's your right. But you should know the evaluation documentation is extensive. Your mother's competency is thoroughly established, and her video statement is unambiguous. The meeting ended badly. Robert and Jennifer stormed out. Audrey left, confused and frightened. This inheritance was supposed to be a gift. Instead, it felt like a nightmare. Over the next week, Robert and Jennifer hired attorneys. Not just any attorneys. A firm that specialized in will contests, aggressive, expensive, known for winning. They also hired a private investigator, instructed them to find anything that could be used against Audrey, any evidence of manipulation, coercion, exploitation. The investigator spent weeks digging, interviewed Estelle's doctors, neighbors, other hospice staff, reviewed medical records, financial records, looking for anything suspicious. They found nothing. Audrey had never accepted gifts beyond birthday cards, never borrowed money, never even had dinner at Estelle's house outside of work hours. She'd maintained professional boundaries even while developing a genuine friendship. But then the investigator found the security footage. November 2019. 6 seconds of Estelle and Audrey embracing in a hospice hallway, both crying. Robert and Jennifer's attorney saw opportunity. This footage showed emotional manipulation, a vulnerable cancer patient being exploited by her caregiver. They could use this. They filed a will contest in March 2023, claimed undue influence, presented the security footage as evidence, argued that Audrey had deliberately cultivated an inappropriate emotional dependence, had manipulated Estelle into believing her children didn't care, had exploited a dying woman's fear of abandonment. Audrey was devastated. She'd cared for Estelle for 17 years with genuine compassion. Now she was being accused of exploitation, manipulation. Everything she'd done was being twisted into something sinister. She hired her own attorney, Benjamin Carter. He reviewed the case, reviewed the evidence, told Audrey the truth. This will contest might take years, might cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. The Bishop children had resources. They weren't giving up easily. But Audrey had truth on her side. 3 doctor evaluations, video statement, 17 years of documented care. The contest would eventually fail, but it would be a long fight. What none of them expected was murder. Before we continue with what happened next, if cases like this matter to you, if you believe caregivers deserve respect and protection, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Here on this channel, we expose inheritance murders and conspiracies. We show how greed destroys families and how justice eventually prevails. Hit that like button if you think this case deserves attention. Drop a comment with your thoughts, because this isn't fiction, this is real. And what Robert and Jennifer Bishop did next proves that wealth doesn't prevent evil. April 2023. The will contest was moving through probate court, depositions scheduled, expert witnesses lined up, both sides preparing for a lengthy legal battle. Robert and Jennifer were confident. They had the 6-second video. They had a narrative. Poor mother manipulated by predatory caregiver. They'd convince a jury, get the will overturned, reclaim their inheritance. But there was a problem. Even if they won, the legal process would take years, maybe 2 years, maybe 3. During that time, the estate would be in limbo, assets frozen, house sitting empty, and Audrey would be alive, fighting back, telling her side of the story, making them look like ungrateful children attacking their mother's caregiver. Robert and Jennifer couldn't accept that. The humiliation, the public judgment, the possibility they might lose. So they explored alternatives. Phone records later recovered would show 53 calls between Robert and Jennifer between March 15th and April 20th. More communication in 5 weeks than they'd had in the previous 5 years. What they were discussing was murder. Neither of them said it explicitly, not in texts, not in emails. They were smart enough to avoid documentation. But the subtext was clear. If Audrey died before the will contest concluded, the inheritance would revert to them. No beneficiary meant the will was invalid. They'd inherit as Estelle's children. Default heirs. Robert knew someone, a business contact, someone who'd mentioned having connections to people who solved problems quietly. In late April, Robert traveled to Chicago, met with this contact, explained the situation vaguely, inheritance dispute, difficult person who needed to be removed from the equation. The contact understood, provided a name, someone in Montana who could handle it. $30,000, half up front, half after completion. Robert agreed, transferred $15,000 through cryptocurrency, untraceable. The man in Montana was named Derek Vaughn, 42. Criminal record including assault and armed robbery. Recently released from prison. Needed money desperately. Vaughn was contacted. Given basic information. Target was a nurse named Audrey Fiske. Lived alone in Bozeman. Work schedule predictable. Should look like a random crime. Robbery, assault. Nothing that pointed to a hired killing. Vaughn accepted the job, began surveillance. Audrey's routine was easy to track. She lived in a small house on the south side of Bozeman. Drove a 10-year-old Toyota Camry. Worked part-time at St. James Hospice. Spent most evenings at home. She was dealing with the stress of the will contest, meeting with her attorney, preparing for depositions, trying to process the fact that 17 years of genuine care were being twisted into something ugly. On May 3, 2023, Audrey finished her shift at the hospice. Left at 6 p.m., drove toward home, Stopped at a grocery store, routine shopping. Vaughn followed, waited in the parking lot, but too many people around, too many cameras, not the right opportunity. Audrey continued home. Vaughn followed at a distance, watched her pull into her driveway, waited until dark. At 9 p.m. he approached her house, knocked on the door. When Audrey answered, he forced his way inside. What happened next is partially reconstructed from forensic evidence. There was a struggle. Audrey fought hard, scratched his face, drew blood. Vaughn overpowered her, strangled her, took her purse and laptop to make it look like robbery, left her body in the living room. Then he panicked, realized he'd left DNA, blood from the scratches. This was messier than planned. He returned an hour later, loaded Audrey's body into her own car, drove it into the mountains, found a remote location off Highway 191, dug a shallow grave, buried her, drove her car back toward Bozeman, abandoned it in a grocery store parking lot, wiped for prints, left. May 4th, 2023. Audrey didn't show up for work, didn't answer her phone. This was unusual. She was always reliable, always punctual. Her supervisor called her emergency contact, Audrey's sister in Billings. Had she heard from Audrey? Was she okay? The sister hadn't heard from her. Started calling, no answer. Drove to Bozeman, found Audrey's house empty, car gone, signs of a disturbance inside. Called police. Officers responded. Found evidence of a struggle, bloodstains, overturned furniture, but no Audrey, no body, no clear crime scene. They issued a missing person bulletin. Searched the area. Found her car abandoned at a grocery store 3 miles from her house. No sign of Audrey. Detective Lisa Nguyen was assigned lead investigator. Montana State Police. 18 years on the force. Experienced in violent crimes. She reviewed Audrey's recent activities, learned about the inheritance dispute, the will contest, the massive sum of money at stake. She requested information on the Bishop children, who benefited if Audrey disappeared. Robert Bishop, Jennifer Bishop Walsh. Both stood to inherit millions if Audrey was out of the picture. Detective Nguyen interviewed them by phone. Both expressed shock and concern, said they hoped Audrey was found safe, denied any involvement in her disappearance. Both had alibis. Robert was in Chicago, Jennifer was in Seattle. Neither had been in Montana in weeks. But Detective Nguyen had been doing this long enough to know that people with money don't do their own dirty work. She obtained phone records. Both Robert and Jennifer had made numerous calls to each other, and Robert had made several calls to an unknown number in Chicago. She traced that number, burner phone, registered to a fake name, but triangulation data showed it was used in an area known for criminal activity. On May 12th, a hiker found a shallow grave off Highway 191, called police. Officers responded. They found Audrey's body. Decomposition had begun, but identification was possible through personal effects and later dental records. Cause of death, strangulation. Defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She'd fought hard. DNA under her fingernails, male profile, not in the database initially, but the sample was preserved. Detective Nguyen knew this was murder, knew it was connected to the inheritance, knew the Bishop children were involved somehow. She obtained warrants, phone records, financial records, travel records. She found Robert's cryptocurrency transfer, $15,000, sent to an account later traced to Derek Vaughn. She found Derek Vaughn, known criminal, recently released, living in Billings. On May 18th, Vaughn was arrested. DNA sample collected, matched the DNA found under Audrey's fingernails. In interrogation, Vaughn knew he was facing life without parole. His only option was cooperation. He confessed. Told detectives everything. Robert Bishop hired him through an intermediary. Paid $30,000 total. Job was to kill Audrey Fiske, make it look random, prevent her from inheriting. With Vaughn's testimony, detectives arrested Robert Bishop on May 22, 2023, charged with conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder under felony murder rule. Jennifer Bishop Walsh was arrested the same day. Phone records showed she'd been involved in planning, had encouraged Robert, had agreed to split the cost of the hit. Both were held without bail. Both maintained their innocence. Claimed they'd never wanted Audrey dead, just wanted to contest the will legally. But the evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, financial transfers, Vaughn's testimony, timeline connecting everything. The trial began November 6, 2023, federal courthouse in Helena, Montana. The case drew national attention. Wealthy siblings hiring hitman to kill mother's caregiver over inheritance. The prosecution presented a comprehensive case. Financial records showing payment to Vaughn. Phone records showing coordination between Robert and Jennifer. Vaughn's testimony describing the hit. DNA evidence linking Vaughn to the murder. Timeline proving everything. They also presented Estelle Bishop's video statement, her explanation of why she'd left everything to Audrey, her description of 17 years of devoted care, her anticipation that her children would react badly. The jury watched a dead woman predict exactly what her children would do and explain exactly why they didn't deserve her money.
What?
The defense tried to create doubt, argued Vaughn was lying to get a reduced sentence, argued the phone calls were innocent, argued Robert and Jennifer were grieving children who'd never wished harm on anyone. But the evidence was undeniable: the planning, the payment, the execution, the attempt to make it look random. On December 18, 2023, the jury returned verdicts after 3 days of deliberation. Robert Bishop, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty of first-degree murder under felony murder rule. Jennifer Bishop Walsh, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty of first-degree murder under felony murder rule. Derek Vaughn had previously pled guilty under agreement, murder in the first degree, life with possibility of parole after 30 years. Sentencing came 6 weeks later.
Did anyone
The
check
judge's
the
statement was
stairwell on
scathing.
the 3rd floor
You
yet?
two were born into privilege. Your mother worked hard to provide for you, gave you every advantage, loved you despite your absence from her life. When she chose to reward someone who'd actually been there for her, who'd provided 17 years of compassionate care, you responded with murder. Audrey Fiske dedicated her career to helping dying patients. She cared for your mother through 3 cancer diagnoses, visited over 2,000 times, was there when you weren't. Your mother left her $8 million because she earned it. Through presence, through love, through being there during the hardest years of your mother's life, and you had her killed for it. Robert Bishop, life without possibility of parole. Jennifer Bishop Walsh, life without possibility of parole. You will die in prison, and your mother's final wishes will still stand, because Audrey's family is inheriting the estate you killed for. The courtroom erupted. Audrey's family, who'd flown in from Billings, cried with relief. Justice served. Audrey's memory honored. Audrey's estate, the $8.2 million she'd inherited, was distributed to her family, her siblings, her nephews and nieces. They established a scholarship fund in her name for nursing students. The house Estelle had left her was sold. Proceeds went to the scholarship fund, the Audrey Fiske Memorial Nursing Scholarship, providing financial assistance for hospice nurses pursuing advanced training. Robert and Jennifer Bishop are incarcerated at separate maximum security facilities in Montana. They've filed appeals, all denied. The 6-second security footage they'd used as evidence of manipulation is now used in elder care training, showing genuine human connection between caregiver and patient, showing what real compassion looks like. If this case affected you, if you think caregivers deserve respect and protection, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts on this case. This channel exists to honor victims, to expose greed, to show how investigations bring justice. Hit that like button if you believe Audrey deserved that inheritance. Share this video if you think people need to understand that caregiving is real work, real devotion, real love. Audrey Fiske spent 17 years caring for Estelle Bishop, 2,200 visits, through cancer diagnoses, through surgeries, through pain and fear and despair. She earned Estelle's love, earned her trust, earned every penny of that inheritance. And Robert and Jennifer Bishop killed her for it. They're in prison now, their inheritance forfeited, their names forever associated with greed and murder. Audrey is buried in Billings, near her parents. Her grave is visited regularly by family and former patients, people who knew her compassion, her dedication, her genuine care. Remember her name, Audrey Fiske, hospice nurse, devoted caregiver, victim of greed, someone who deserved so much better. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for honoring caregivers who dedicate their lives to helping others. Audrey's story is why we tell these cases, why we expose greed, why we fight for justice. She was there when no one else was, and that mattered. That should have been enough. Instead, it got her killed, but her memory lives on, in scholarships, in training programs, in the thousands of lives she touched over 17 years of nursing. Justice was served. Robert and Jennifer will die in prison. And Audrey's legacy ensures future caregivers receive the support and respect they deserve. This was her story. This was their crime. This is justice.